They called security on her before she even said a word. No warning, no context. Just two officers summoned like backup, moving straight toward a black woman quietly standing in line with a first-class boarding pass in her hand. The gate agent didn't even glance at the ticket. Didn't need to. "Ma'am, step aside," was all he said, spoken with the kind of finality reserved for trespassers, not travelers. And as she was quietly pulled from the queue, the eyes that followed her didn't protest, they confirmed. Because to them she didn't look like someone who belonged in seat 1A. Not with that skin, not with that calm, not with that silence. But here's the part no one knew. Not the flight staff, not the supervisor smirking behind the kiosk, and certainly not the man who strolled through after her without even showing his ID. The woman they tried to remove hadn't just bought a first-class ticket, she had bought something else. Something far bigger. And by the time they figured it out, no one on that flight would ever fly the same again. This isn't a story about race. This is a story about power. The kind you never see coming. The kind they didn't recognize standing right in front of them. So now, ask yourself, what happens when the person you try to silence turns out to own the silence itself? The sun hadn't fully risen over the city skyline when Leona Marks arrived at the airport terminal. It was 5:43 a.m. early even by airport standards. But the priority access line was already forming. Leona stood slightly apart, not because she didn't belong, but because she'd learned that proximity often invited scrutiny. She wore a simple navy hoodie, faded jeans, and sneakers that had seen better days. Her tightly curled hair was pulled into a low bun, and she carried only a canvas tote bag. No roller bag, no designer label. Just her and the quiet resolve of someone used to traveling alone, used to being underestimated. As she approached the first-class line, a clean-cut employee at the head of the queue glanced up. His name tag read Trevor. He smiled with the kind of trained expression meant to look effortless, but his brows pinched the moment she stepped forward. "Hi there," he said, tilting his head slightly. "This lane's for executive and first-class travelers." Leona didn't flinch. She simply raised her phone and presented her boarding pass. "I know," she said evenly. Trevor's smile wavered, but he scanned the code. Behind her, a man in a blazer and Bluetooth headset sighed dramatically. Trevor glanced at him, then back at Leona. The pressure was obvious. He tapped a few buttons and gave her a reluctant smile. "Right, you're good. Proceed, ma'am." But as she moved forward, he leaned toward the agent beside him and whispered loud enough for her to hear, "Thought she was lost." The other agent snorted softly. Leona kept walking. Things didn't improve at security. Despite TSA pre-check on her ticket, she was pulled aside for a random inspection. Her bag was searched. Inside were small toiletries, a hardcover book, a sealed envelope, and a single red string folder. The officer paused on the envelope. "What's this?" "Legal documents," Leona said calmly. "Private. You a lawyer or something?" "Not exactly." He shrugged and waved her through. She noticed, but didn't react. She was used to its scrutiny that followed her like a shadow under fluorescent light. At gate D4, she found a quiet corner and sat. She didn't pull out her phone. She didn't scroll. Instead, she rested the sealed envelope across her lap. It was heavier than it looked. Inside it was the deciding vote in a billion-dollar airline merger and equity release that could alter the future of regional air travel in North America. She didn't look the part. That was the point. A nearby child gawked at her until the mother, catching Leona's gaze, quickly turned the stroller the other way. The loudspeaker cracked. "Final boarding for Flight 327 to Seattle. All passengers please proceed to Gate D12. She watched how the gate agent smiled at one passenger and waved through another with a golden retriever in a pink carrier. Hospitality was tiered here just like the seating arrangements. And Leona knew she was considered bottom tier. But that wasn't why she was here. 3 years ago, she'd received a letter. A trust fund, hidden behind layers of anonymity, required her approval before finalizing an equity release for a major transportation conglomerate. But there was a clause. The trust required her to fly one of the affected airline's key routes anonymously. "See how they treat you when they think you're nobody," the lawyer had said. So here she was. Now boarding Group 1 for Flight 1498 to Denver. First class and executive platinum. Please approach the gate. Leona rose. As she neared the agent, a man 2 spots ahead of her threw a glance over his shoulder. Then a second look, longer this time. When she reached the desk, the gate agent didn't look up. "Ma'am, boarding is for first and executive only." Leona raised her pass. "Seat 2A. The agent scanned it, forced a smile, and motioned her forward. "Go ahead." She stepped onto the jet bridge, feeling the heat of eyes on her back. She didn't look like first class. That was intentional. At her seat, she settled in, placing the envelope in the seat pocket and tucking her tote beneath the chair. The man in 2B gave her a polite nod, then turned back to his tablet. The cabin lights dimmed. A flight attendant named Sloane passed by, her expression practiced but impersonal. "Good morning," she said without inflection. Leona nodded. No return. A clipboard-wielding supervisor paused briefly at her row. A whisper to Sloane. 2 glances. Then he moved on. Leona knew this rhythm. She had danced it before. Water was passed to rows 1 and 3. Not hers. Sloane passed her twice, never meeting her eyes. Never offering service. The beverage cart rolled by. "Just water," Leona requested. The junior attendant looked to Sloane. Sloane replied, "Complimentary beverage service isn't included in your class of ticket." "For first class?" Leona asked, calm. "I'll check with the cabin manager," Sloane said and disappeared. The man in 2B raised a brow. "I thought drinks came with first?" Leona said nothing. A baby cried. Flight attendants cooed and fetched milk. Another row got warm towels. Leona's was skipped. No mistake. This was scripted. Halfway through the flight, the cabin manager, Bryce, stopped at her seat. "We had a seating issue reported by ground crew. Would you mind if I rescan your credentials?" She presented her pass again. Bryce paused too long. Strange, must have been a system error. "I'll make a note." No apology. Sloane returned. "We've adjusted your record, ma'am. Let us know if you need anything." Leona didn't reply. She turned to the window. Later, Sloane returned again. "We need you to move to 17D for weight balance." Leona looked at her. "Weight balance," she repeated. "Yes, ma'am. Just protocol. I'll stay where I am." Sloane didn't argue. She just moved on. Time passed. The meal cart arrived. Sloane served 2B with a smile. Then walked past Leona. Leona waited. 3 rows served. "Then was I skipped?" she asked quietly. "Oh, I wasn't sure you were eligible," Sloane laughed. "Sometimes assignments get complicated." "Nothing complicated about a seat assignment," Leona said. Sloane blinked. "Would you like chicken or cod?" "Cod." It arrived 15 minutes later, cold, undercooked, and clearly meant to offend more than nourish. She didn't eat it. The man in 2B leaned over. "That's messed up." She nodded, eyes fixed ahead. Then it happened. A man from row 5 strolled up, leaned on her seat, and loudly asked Sloane, "She's in first." "Must be points or something," Sloane chuckled. The man slapped the seat and walked off. Leona didn't move. But her fingers brushed the envelope again. After landing, she waited. When security approached, she didn't flinch. "Ma'am, come with us. Just a few questions." She was led through a back corridor to a room labeled Operations Holding 3B. Inside, a woman at a desk greeted her. "There's been an anomaly with your record," she said. "Your ticket was flagged as irregular." Leona placed the envelope gently on the desk. "Irregular how?" The woman tapped her screen. "It originated from a legacy voucher program. Possibly manipulated." "You're accusing me of fraud?" "We're just protecting operational integrity." Leona reached into her tote, pulled out a slim card, and slid it across the desk. "Platinum. Embossed. Unmistakable." "This," Leona said, "is level 4 clearance from Arden Financial Group." The woman blinked. "That's a private equity firm." "No," Leona cut in, opening the envelope. "It's the parent institution that owns 41% of your pending merger shares." She held up a legal document. "This is a disclosure agreement. I'm the listed witness and final compliance signature. And this flight was a real-world evaluation." The air shifted. No one spoke. Finally, a voice, "We're to release her immediately." Leona didn't smile. She simply walked out of the room, toed over shoulder, envelope in hand. The ripple had already begun. And by the time the airline's executive board got the full report, it was too late. The woman they tried to erase didn't just belong. She owned the silence they had tried to use against her. And now it spoke louder than they ever could.